Amy Gatzmeyer, co-founder of Tribe.
Hello.
Welcome. I'm so
Thank
happy.
you.
Yeah. Yeah, this is awesome. I've been sitting with some people that I've met for the first time, some other people like my teachers who and now I get to sit with you who started out as a student of my teacher training, and then there was this whole journey, and now we work together in a lot of ways.
Yes,
So
it's
it's so
true. During the year, we see each other quite a bit at certain times.
we do. And you're right now in Germany. But we met at West Point, and before we can start before we met, but yeah, just take this question however you want to receive it. Who are you and what are you offering to the world these days?
Well, I am a mom and a student, and those have often gone together. I homeschool my kids, and so I'm a teacher for them in a maybe traditional sense of the Western world teacher. I've also since become a yoga teacher within Tribe, and I primarily work within Tribe as that. And then I consider myself a student within my own life under you, and then under my kids primarily. So that's who I am. I'm a military veteran, which brought me into Tribe, and currently a military spouse. So that continues to be a big connection and drive of, even like you said, we live in Germany. So I guess it shapes your everyday, even when you don't think about it. So that's who I am.
That's awesome. And there's so many other branches on the tree. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey that brought you to your yoga practice and then what turned into the Tribe?
Sure. I dabbled, I think like a lot of people maybe like dabbled in a few yoga classes in college or when I was younger, mainly going for sure for the physical practice. And then I did not do, after college, I joined the Army. I did not do much yoga then, if any, frankly. And then I got out of the Army when I was pregnant, had my children, and it was during my pregnancy I did start to do yoga again during pregnancy, as I was leaving the Army, and then with my daughter. And it was definitely having kids, my second child, that really brought me back to yoga and not to the physical practice, to this idea of like, I'm not really responding in this time and place like I would like to. And I need to be curious about why I respond how I am. And yeah, actually the very big commitment that I made to yoga was during Lent. Baptiste has like a book of 40 days of something, I don't know, and Lent is 40 days. So I did that for 40 days, and I didn't really stop after that. So
What do you mean by, in terms of working, like raising your second child, and you came back to yoga, but not the physical practice? And
So
really,
at first, when I had dabbled it in college, it was like the physical practice, a yoga studio that brought me to it. And then when I went back to yoga, I actually never went to a yoga studio.
okay.
I did it all on my own. And I did do physical practices in the morning, because it was part of like the book that I was following. But then the big change for me was like the meditation when my daughter was napping at that time. And that really changed my perspective of what yoga is and how it could help and change me.
Yeah.
And then I guess you finished the question by saying how that brought me to Tribe. So it's a long journey now. Yeah, so I, after that point, like really got super dedicated to yoga. Like I said, I did not really go to a studio until several years later, about 5 years later. Then I went to a studio occasionally on the weekends. So when I joined you with teacher training, I think I was maybe an anomaly in that I was pretty self-taught. And I like working alone, and which is, interesting for leadership talk. I like practicing alone. And then we really connected at the other people within the yoga teacher training. I think we saw a need based upon our experience as military personnel, veterans, Like I said, I did not practice yoga. I did not have these tools of mindfulness. And it wasn't until I got out of the Army that I think I really realized that something was missing and how I was reacting was different. I didn't find a place to even notice that within myself while I was in the military. So I was interested to create a space that would allow for that to happen. And though we created Tribe.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to go back up for those who are listening who don't fully know what Tribe is. So you met at the teacher training that we were actually just talking about Liz Kent, Major Liz Kent.
Yes.
She invited me to come to teach at the West Point Yoga Club for the cadets there at West Point, correct? And then you and Jessica were veterans and came in. And I will never forget your final practicum or leading up to the final practicum. Speaking of leadership, but we'll talk about that another time. But
that
then
was not my final.
that wasn't your final. Okay. When you stood behind the podium. Yeah. But I bring that in because it's been such a journey being able to witness you through that time. Like you said, you work together on your own, basically teaching yourself the yoga practice. And when you entered in, you definitely had a depth to the practice that most people who have just gone to a yoga studio and did the practices in the physical way, and maybe they got some of the other elements that, that yoga is the like you spoke of, the meditation, the breath work, the philosophy of it. But you actually did really come in with a depth that some students don't always have. But yes, it was more like, as I've been witnessing you over the years, it's really been this transformation of stepping into that role of leadership, not just as a yoga teacher, but yeah, you helped co-found Tribe, which brings the tools of yoga to the military. And I would love to just kind of look at that a little bit more under a lens of what that meant for you to step into a leadership role, not just as a yoga teacher, but as this co-founder and maybe other roles in your life.
Yes, through the yoga journey that you've led us on, I've discovered that my Dharma type is laborer. So, and I fought it a little bit at first, or maybe not fought, but I was a little snarky. And I realized, though, upon reflection, that I think it's a role that I've always filled. I'm one of those people that, maybe used to be a little bit self-depreciating, like, I don't have any strengths. I'm not really good at anything. And now I've realized, like, well, those things aren't totally true. And they're not totally false. Like, I'm not particularly great at anything, except my family and I've determined that I try really hard. I will try really hard at all the things, and I can fail at a lot of them. And then I'll just keep trying something else. But I tend to try when I see a need for something or a hole, if you will. And so that's, within the homeschooling community here, like I said, that's my foremost job and leadership role, I would say. So I've created homeschool mom book clubs, especially after 2020. A lot of homeschoolers were very isolated, especially being in Germany. So we've created ways for moms to get together and discuss while kids play. I've set up other homeschooling groups. I've set up play groups, chess clubs. Again, it's like when I see a need, I'll just try to put something fill the void. And then with Tribe, yeah, same thing. So we came together, we had this idea, Jessica, you, me, Cece, and I knew I couldn't do it on my own. So I needed some guidance, which I guess fits the labor type as well. But I knew that I can do work, and I can try lots of different things. And we've discovered that starting a business or starting a nonprofit is all about the trying. There's a lot of different paths that work sometimes and then don't work anymore, and that's okay. That's business too. That's working with others. So yeah, I think that's this idea of leadership is you try what works, recognize that something's going to work for you personally for a little bit, and then you might need to adjust because of family circumstances, especially in the military. Like, we move, so there's times of year that I need to recognize it's not going to be my strongest. with homeschooling, we have seasons, so seasonally adapting, choosing your energy levels and products then, but also adapting to, the population that you're serving. So try as a leader to find the void, fill the void, and just keep adjusting for yourself and others, I think.
Yeah, thank you for that. When you're talking about trying, it's funny because I have another group that I'm a part of, and they want you to get rid of that word try because it's actually like somewhat of a negative, but I love how your spin is really from this place. When you're speaking to it, it's a place of non-attachment. And I also hear that, like, what I know of you to be very curious too. So it's not like sometimes people say, oh, I'll try to do that, and it feels almost defeative. Like that's where this group that I'm in, they're kind of speaking around that. But with you, it's like, it feels like there's a lot of spunk there. Like, all right, I'm just going to get up and I'm going to try this again. And I love that about you, because you have really been able to see what works. Like you said, when it doesn't, we just, pivot a little bit. And that's the non-attachment, not like holding on to this has to work and give it the death grip, which I'm guilty of in the past. But then you also have this element of curiosity. And I know that these are two themes that you bring into your yoga class too. So I'd love for you to just sort of explain a little bit of how you teach a yoga class with curiosity and on non-attachment and what that might look like, and then how that does really directly apply to life. And it could be leadership or just life in general.
Yeah, well, certainly, shout out to you. A lot of my so much of my curiosity in teaching now very much comes from Movement 109 practice that like I do on my own, and then that I've learned to incorporate. So I would say first and foremost, I'm always curious about my students. So with the population that I'm currently teaching, I just have like a free drop-in class with a military unit here in Germany, a US military unit. And so I will have a few people that come consistently. Most people come once and then never come again. And I'm always very curious, like what brings you here, and I'm forever curious about, and we'll never have the answers, but about like what their current ideas are of yoga, what their fears are, especially when someone only comes to a class one time, it can be challenging to create a relationship with them and have ever answers. So a lot of the curiosity, and it goes maybe the trying, sits in this unknown element, like non-attachment. This person's probably not going to come back. That's okay. Maybe they will. And I also can't be attached if they come back or not, right? Because they have a busy up tempo here. It just is. I don't even try to think of reasons anymore. So first and foremost, I'm curious about my students. What are their needs? Then beyond that, I'm just always, watching them and then inviting them to be curious as well. So I do that through questions, like maybe if nothing else, they leave the practice knowing that yoga doesn't just equal flexibility, because that's what most of them seem to think. So what do you hear for you in this pose? Bodily sensations. What is it like when you shift your weight a little bit this way? What is it like when you drag your hands a little bit that way? What is it like just to breathe or not breathe in this moment? So lots of questions then for the students. And yeah, I think I return to, frankly, the same questions over and over for those people that do come back all the time. Then in the end, during Shavasana, which I think can be one of the most challenging parts for a yoga teacher or a restorative practice, just the quiet, like what am I experiencing in this moment? And how can I create space for others in this moment? And how do I find the balance of the two? Right? These are kind of continual questions. And I think on the wider scope of yoga and leadership and tribe, like where does my practice end and someone else start? I think these are continual questions of curiosity, and same with being a leader / a laborer. Like, when am I a leader? When am I a laborer? And where are those mixed?
Yeah,
I a lot of questions. Always questions.
I see a Venn diagram, like when you just said that, right? Like, where do they meet in the middle? And I love the questions because that does leave a lot of space, it sounds like, the way they, and I have experienced your class, so I know, so I can confirm that. And there's also what you bring to it is a little bit with that curiosity of playfulness, like a lightheartedness, not to bring everything so serious, because sometimes I feel like when people come to a practice, what you spoke to about when you were asking them why they come, and there might be addressing that there might be fears there. When we bring that lightness and that playfulness and curiosity, it sort of drops down those barriers that fear puts up, right? And so it invites them into in a more playful way, which I think you do so well, particularly the population that you generally work with, being in the military, because there's a way that, things are done, and you're sort of doing the same thing, but just in a slightly more expansive way. So you're meeting them where they're at, but then allowing them to go a little bit in a different direction. Do you feel the same?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I definitely try to use, terms the military knows. I refer to running or weightlifting a lot. I know that this is typically how people spend their time physically. And so I try to relate to them on that aspect. And then, like you said, bring in a little bit of playfulness, which you don't always see in a male dominated and even like male mindset dominated. I think the military is 20% female now, so definitely still male dominated. And so you don't always see this playfulness. When I was in the military, I certainly didn't feel like I could have elements of playfulness, and I would definitely wear, like masks and speak louder and call and make demands more to make myself bigger. I was also very young at the time. Like that's part of being in the military. You're either very young or very old. And so even within that, right, people are feeling out, who am I now? But at that point, I wasn't curious or asking questions. I was just lost in the wind, not knowing who I was and speaking loudly. So
yeah. So I love that, because I'm curious to see who you are now. And if there was, if you could go back to that younger version of you being in the military, do you have some words of wisdom to pass on to her?
I don't know. I try not to. It's a good question. I wonder sometimes. I try not to look back that much. I think I would just be more forgiving. And also, but not just forgiving of myself, like forgiving of others. Because I think maybe being this trying person that I've always been, when I see others not trying, I don't understand. And I think now, I have non-attachment, I have curiosity of like, I don't know what happened at breakfast for that person, or I don't know what happened before breakfast. And it doesn't matter. Whereas before, I think I could just be harsh in my thoughts to myself and others, which led to quick reactions, mental exhaustion, and yeah.
I think that's a really important conversation to have in terms of the leadership, because I think I've been there as well. And I've been working on that a lot myself, is especially when you're in a role that you can see the potential for yourself, but also for others. And it's somewhat your job to pull that out of them. Right. But then they ultimately have the free will to make the choice to come along or not. Right. And so it's something, and you also said something earlier too about the class, like if they come back to the class or not, and to not be attached to them not coming, because that could also get in the way too of like, it could go into the people pleasing as well, of like, oh, well, why didn't they come and follow my class again? And
for
get
sure,
into that.
for sure.
Yeah. So those are sort of some pitfalls that can come in those leadership roles of sort of letting ego get in the way, whether it be your ego of like, why didn't they come? Or what you were just speaking into about them not living up to your expectation. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's certainly something. The people pleasing, I think, is something I think about, right? Like we said, that as leaders, we adapt to what, or business owners, nonprofit owners, whatever. Yes, like we do need to adapt to what needs are and to what desires are to meet our populations. And I also need to know like what's best for my population, you know, being curious, like, why are you here? I also work with a physical trainer there and an athletic trainer who tells me, you know, hey, people need to come to the class for XYZ for their bodies. It's never because they need to get stronger and do more push-ups and, you know, do some crazy back bends. It's like because they need to find some calm and look for themselves. And I think a lot of people will come to my class. When I say think, I mean know, because I've asked them and they've told me, you know, with a background in pot yoga and super fast vinyasa. And this, I think, is their expectation sometimes, and that's not what I teach. And I know that's not, those sort of classes don't meet the intention that they gave me, don't meet the intention that the personal trainers have set for them. And so, yeah, you're stuck in this. It's an interesting place, I think, from a tribe teacher versus being like a studio teacher where I might need to adapt more. But when do others also not know what they want and are blind a little bit, even to the options, frankly? Like if that's the only type of yoga they know, then that's literally what they know. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And it goes back to what we touched on a little bit ago too, of like, we have to meet them where they're at, whether it is that they have an expectation that's at a hot yoga and we're going to go, you know, or power yoga where we go super fast, or we're going to get really sweaty. They might have that when they come in the door, or they just have never been exposed. And specifically the population we're talking about is military, but this could really be for anybody in any situation. As somebody comes in with an idea of what they're entering into, and that could be a job, right? So we have, as a leader, we have to kind of meet them where they're at, what they think their experience is about to be, right? And sort of not like people please them and try to, you know, get them to drink the Kool-Aid, but like just say, I see you. I see where you're at. I see what this, you know, I'm listening to you. I see what your expectation might be. However, I'm going to give you a little bit of that so you feel grounded and safe. But I'm also taking you to this other cool place, right? And
Sure, and knowing that it might not be an easy journey to get there, you know.
Yeah. And I think that's how you bridge it so well in the way that you teach and the way that you, I'm sure also, I mean, I haven't witnessed you with your kids, but how you do your homeschooling too. It's like you use that curiosity almost like a bridge, right? Like, hey, you got to the bridge. I'm like, you're not a troll. Like, you know, like you have to pay
You're not
troll, like has to
bridge.
pay, not under the bridge. Well, whoever that is that stands at the bridge and like has to pay
well, the troll's under, so we're going to be over the bridge.
Okay, we're at the bridge. We're about to pay the toll. And you're like, okay, I'm going to give you a heads up of what's ahead, but we're going to use some curiosity. We're not actually going over the bridge, but we're going to animal like crawl over, I don't know, on the banister or something. But that's what I feel like you offer this in the way that you teach, because you bring, like you spoke of, you touched on it earlier, and I know this about you too, is like you don't just teach asana, like the physical practice, but you bring in a lot of like your own curiosity of movement. Like you touched on, you bring in the elements of movement 109 and the work that you do with what's it called? Mace?
Oh, the mace.
Yeah, the mace.
Yes, my mace.
and all that functional movement. And do you want to speak to that a little bit of like why you're drawn to it and why you bring that in?
Sure. And maybe it's because, like I said, I like moving and I like doing things by myself. So weightlifting and mace work is pretty key for that. It's not like I'm going to go join a soccer team or something. And so I'm drawn to individual movements. I like getting stronger. I like it, like literally feels empowered. I think that the mind and movement connection in yoga actually aligns really perfectly with weight bearing activities. Like you have to be able to literally have a mind connection to know which muscles to activate to lift weights. Same with mace. So a steel mace, if you don't know, is like literally like a mace from the Middle Ages. And then you swing it around yourself, or you lift it, or you toss it. And you have to be super mindful about where that 10-pound mace is flying across your house. or or else you get, apparently my son tells me I have 20 marks on my ceiling. So yeah, so I just like things that like literally ground me into the moment, and allow for this creativity, and I think a certain element of expression and creativity. Yeah.
Yeah,
Expansion and grounding.
I love that. I mean, that was a question I was going to ask you later, but we're here now, is this idea of centering and how it's so important in terms of being a leader, being able to, you've obviously loved to work alone. We've gotten that through this talk, but you do lead a group of people and tribe and teaching, but like and you're in your family too, right? You're a leader in your family. And so it feels like what you're speaking into is like, you have to feel really grounded in your body. You have to feel centered in your body in order to step into those roles. And can you speak to that? Or is there other elements that you do to center yourself?
Yeah. And I would say that, frankly, I feel that most in my homeschool, if people homeschooled their kids in 2020 or had to have the kids at home, or anyone that lives with anybody for an extended period of time, whether it's your animal or your pet or, a older relative. I think this can be the ultimate place of quick reactions and being drawn, especially if you have, multiple kids or a spouse and a kid or whatever, a dog and a cat, multiple needs in one time. And so that's when I most notice it is, I'll be working over here with somebody on one subject, and then, hey, mommy, come look at this over here. And I used to go back and forth, and try to like meet all needs at one time. And then you realize like, I'm really nowhere, right? And so when do I feel grounded? And when I feel grounded, then I can say, no, I'm here now. And I'm doing this. Yeah. And this is also working. I think the other obvious example now is like Zoom life. No, I can't go and take something out of the oven because like I'm here in this meeting. And yes, this idea with technology and where you are can definitely feel not grounding. So just I do kind of come back to that mantra, like I am here. And is my mind also here, or is it elsewhere? And I think wearing a lot of different hats as a leader, whether you're a leader and a family member, a leader and a teacher, a leader and a volunteer, whatever, it's like knowing what role am I filling right now. And it can be the same role, but maybe a different intent from time to time, and being grounded in that. I think is important for me.
Yeah, you touched on so many really important things. I mean, the boundaries of, especially if you are in one space. And I think everybody felt that in some way, unless like me, they lived alone. Actually, I lived with grandma for a number of months, and then I needed to move out because I needed my boundaries. Grandma, I know she's listening. But it like what you spoke of is really, claiming your space, the internal space, the physical space. And that doesn't, and when I'm listening to you and feeling into that, it's not like a put up the walls, I'm not available right now, like the blinds go up, right? Like, no, it's felt like to me, like you decided, you dug your heels in, you took a breath, and it's like, okay, this is where I am right now. This is what I can offer to this person, and I can't do it for this. And it feels like you really know how to ground in that way that is also giving, not just closing off, but actually in that really reciprocal energy, but with really clear boundaries. And then you also spoke really a bigger conversation. I feel like we need a whole other interview about is the technology and those boundaries that we have, or the lack of, because we are in our personal home space now. And we don't know what's going on in the background, right? Like, I think I saw your daughter walk in a minute ago.
She comes in. She often comes in quite excited. So bring her down.
Which is absolutely fabulous. But it is, it's like we've all of a sudden the last handful of years, we have lost those boundaries that we physically had to a certain extent. And now that they have somewhat dissolved. And so I'd love to, because now I'm also visualizing you with your family and having those moments and saying, and then how, and I know this has been a journey with you, because I remember this came up a lot in your teacher training, was the emotions of others, particularly in the family, but also in other leadership roles too. Like how is that being grounded been in a really important part of that evolution of being able to hold space for the other emotional landscapes of the people that you're leading?
Well, when I'm able to see beyond my own, emotional landscape, to use your word, I realize like I have space for others. Right. And so I felt like so much of my reactions, and I'm not perfect, right? Like this happened when I don't feel grounded. It's usually when my family comes up and is like, why are you, moving so fast? And why are you trying to do multiple things at one time? And I'm like, I'm not, it's totally fine. Everything's fine. I have plenty of time, and you can watch yours. And so others, right, will usually call us out when they know my goals. And oh man, big question. So what I am trying to say here is that when I notice I am not grounded, it is when I am like most egotistical, and I will try to be self-serving in my emotions at the extent of others. And so I don't know if that makes sense, but I will be like so wrapped up in my own mind that I can't be curious about others, and I can't be curious about how my current emotions, reactions are affecting others. And so when I am most grounded, that's when I can say and make the right decisions of, right, how did I see them at the time? I am here, and I know that you need me, and I can respond, or this, and this is my response, or, hey, I'm gonna have to look at this later. I don't have a response for that now. Whereas sometimes when I am like most off balance and trying to juggle multiple things, I will try to be everywhere at once, thus nowhere, or just literally nowhere and shut myself off and choose not to be grounded anywhere. I don't know.
Yeah. So there's so much there. I'm wondering, because I can kind of like visualize this. And by the way, I would love to like be a fly on the wall when you're trying to travel, because I know you always like
oh golly, we have
it'll be fun to watch. Just kidding. But so in those moments, let's just imagine that you're like kind of running around and catching yourself, and maybe family members are acknowledging this. What is a go-to for you to say, okay, I caught myself, I'm in this hamster wheel of, my old pattern of reacting and sort of staying in my own like chaotic bubble, it feels like. Once you catch yourself, what is your first go-to?
So the thing I've had the most success with recently is journaling. And I still have to like actively choose to step away and like actually journal, right? Because I heard this said recently and I like it. When you are in this rabbit wheel or whatever we said, like you can just go over and over, and I can run the same path over and over and over. And when I have to write, like I have to get off the wheel and finish my thought. I guess I could literally just write the same thing over and over and over and over. And when I'm ready to make a change, which is, what would happen when I pick up my journal, like I have to finish the thought. And then I can usually like see it in writing and say, okay, like this isn't true, or this is true, and that's okay. Like it needs to change. Now it's done. But I have to choose to make that time. I have to choose to step away. And I have to be cognizant enough to notice that that's where I am. And, sometimes it takes time. It could take a week for those elements to be together, and that's okay. Fortunately, I'm near forgiving people, accepting people. I think that's one important part of being a leader, like having a good team around you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love the journaling. That's excellent. So what it sounds like is you catch yourself and then you start to write whatever that hamster wheel thought is until you find some sort of completion of that thought, and then you can make a new choice. Awesome.
Yeah, and it's usually pretty fast, right? Because I'm usually able to say, this is the same story that I've told myself a million other times. It's not true. Here we are again. And that's okay, because I've been doing this work for quite a few years now, like pretty intensely.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have had that same ability like even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So.
And so, not to change the subject, but I think it is intertwined to this because you kind of spoke about the forgiveness on the other side of it. And we have a beautiful program that you really put together with one of our graduates of the tribe program, Anne-Marie, for moral injury. And we haven't really dove at this point where I'm talking and interviewing, we haven't really dove into this idea of moral injury, but I think it's a really important conversation to have in the scope of not just military, but really any sort of anybody, but we're kind of under the scope of the leadership. So can you share a little bit about just, first of all, what moral injury is, if people don't know, and then
Sure.
what you've learned, and not everything, of course, but like some words of wisdom around that.
Yeah. So moral injury is not a, DMS diagnosis. So it's just maybe you've observed a collection of patterns in yourself. It should be said, if you think you have severe moral injury after listening, like certainly seek professional care. It can be really dangerous and, for yourself and for others, and how you live in the world. But moral injury, we all have a code of morals, whether it's shaped by our religion, our upbringing, all of these confluence of things. And when we go beyond morals, so beyond our moral set, which is different for everyone. So as with all things, this is very individualized, very subjective. Then we could be a consequence for moral injury. So we definitely see this in the military. We ask people to kill others. That's usually a pretty big human moral, right? Don't hurt others, don't kill others. And if we're in a situation when that happens, there's a potential for moral injury. Certainly doesn't have to be anywhere dramatic. Moral injury was a very big issue with healthcare within 2020, right? When you're choosing, one patient, this patient or that patient. But again, it can be things within your larger scope, like for some people, just knowing that they weren't supposed to steal time, energy, whatever, and they did. Yeah. So we all have our own morals. There's no worse than or whatever than anyone else. It's just whatever that is for you. So yeah, working on this work, I definitely realized, I think that's what stayed with me from the military, is my own moral injury. And the big symptoms of moral injury, shame is the absolute, number one feeling, shame versus guilt, right? This feeling of like, I am a bad person because of whatever. So withdrawing from others, withdrawing into yourself, getting on that hamster wheel of ideas that you can't move beyond it and that you can't be a good person anymore are pretty classic symptoms of moral injury. So I can certainly see these patterns that I recur in myself. Like I said, now I can identify routines that might bring me back to that hamster wheel. And I can work on telling myself it's not true. Yeah, the number one way beyond moral injury is, serving others, reaching out to others, not letting yourself go through that place of withdrawal. And all people make mistakes. Certainly leaders make mistakes, and those can be some of the most obvious, I shouldn't say obvious, public mistakes, things that other people see. And that can be hard. That can be hurtful to yourself and potentially to others. So I think recognizing symptoms of moral injury in yourself and or especially as a leader, people that are under you, especially in professions where moral injury might be more common. So military, doctor, even teachers. I have strong moral injury if, you have students that never eat breakfast every day. Students, that when you go home, they're going to get hurt from whatever circumstance that you're sending them home to, and there's nothing you can do. So if you're a leader and you find yourself in one of these professions, I think it's important that you know your people and know yourself and take time to be curious about symptoms that you're experiencing, or not even symptoms, maybe not the right word. Just observe what's going on around you, and within you.
Yeah, I think, I think some a big portion of the group that will be here listening will also be in the healing realm too. And I definitely feel that there can be some issues around moral injury as well, when we feel that, it's our job to heal people. And that's why I don't even use, I don't use that word healer, because it puts that weight and that responsibility, but it's really about the holding space for the person to heal themselves. But if we think that we're truly holding that healing power and giving it to them, and something goes quote unquote wrong, whatever that might be, maybe it's, that kundalini energy rising and they're not ready for it. And it creates more of like a split, like almost like a, psychotic episode. And there could be some moral injury around that. Right.
Sure.
And so I'm just going to throw that into the mix, because there might be people out there who think, oh, that's a military or doctor thing. But that could be a very, very real conversation to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Knowing, so always asking, like, what are my morals? What are my limits? It's my mission. And anytime something goes off of what you envision as this ideal, this perfect, which I think spiritual leaders might very much have, right? They've spent a lot of time. This is what I imagine I'm bringing to the world. Yeah. Whenever something might go off course, then that's ripe ground for potential moral injury for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think the word that you said right there was limits. I think that it's the boundaries. It's being able to understand, okay, this is what I'm capable of. And this is actually what I'm, should set that boundary for. Even if I'm capable of more, I need to set this container up for this person so that they can facilitate their own journey, right? Like I'm leading them to a certain point, but then they actually have to be the ones that pick up their feet and step forward and choose to step forward or go off in a whole other direction. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that kind of comes into this idea of space and how you, first of all, what is an open, safe, inclusive, and whatever other word you want to put in there, space that for you. What does that entail?
Well, we've established time and again, I like being by myself. So a not crowded space, a space with people that I know, a space that I can exit, a space that's pretty quiet. Yeah. I mean, other than that, I'm pretty blankets.
I don't mean to put you on the spot. I did not have the intention to ask you about this, but I don't know if we spoke publicly about your Movement 109 experience and dancing. Do you mind touching on that a little bit?
Sure. So I didn't like dancing. I wouldn't say it wasn't something I was ever comfortable in doing. And so when Phoebe introduced Movement 109, I was like, I don't know about this. Now I love rolling on the ground, and I love it even more now. It's like what I go to still. But even like in the beginning of Movement 109, you were like having us lay on the floor. I was like, no. Like I hurt everywhere laying on the floor, and I don't know how to free move or dance. So lots and lots of discomfort, internal, physical, like external, all the realms of discomfort. But I stuck with it, gradually stayed with it, largely for the groundwork. And then I just increasingly felt more comfortable with it for sure. During lockdown, I'd like dance all around the house all the time with my kids. Well, they were not dancing, and it was mainly just me. They were just like, watch me.
Yeah, I think you got to have them come to one of the Movement 109.
Yes. Yeah. Quimby got into a little bit. Yeah. She'll dance.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's led to some pretty emotional reactions in me at times, especially in public space. You observed, I think ultimately it led to that. You never know, like what's the chicken or the egg when you have a pretty big reaction. I do now, just because of how I practice, typically practice Movement 109 alone. versus with others, but I think I'm comfortable practicing it with others. So movement like that took me out of and way beyond my comfort zone, in terms of relating to others, then relating to myself. I feel as though dancing, even when alone, is very vulnerable.
Mm.
And I feel as though it is just a naturally public act. And I don't know if everyone would agree with me. I think people would probably disagree with me, but that's how it feels in my body. Like a very open and vulnerable act, even on my own. So even when I practice it on my own, it still feels very open and reaching out to others, for good some days and for challenge some other days. So
Wow.
it's maybe a lot.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. I brought that into the conversation because when I was asking you the question about an open, safe, inclusive space, because that's a question I'm asking for everybody. And when you were talking about it, I was like, that's right. You were really somewhat uncomfortable when we first came in, because I forced you all. It's part of your teacher training, your 300-hour. I brought that into a workshop saying, because I didn't know what I was doing yet. Like I had been doing this movement, particularly the groundwork and codifying it with the healer as my mentor for a number of months. And I thought, I'm not sure if this is something that's just for me to do at home and practice it as my own healing, or if this is for something to share. And the mentor said, yes, this is for you to share. So you were essentially, I think it was the second group, because I think I shared it in the retreat that Jessica was on just before that, like the week before that. But it was my first time holding a big space for people. And so I will be transparent. I wasn't fully confident in it because I was still trying things out. And you all were sort of forced into this space to try this, which was not necessarily yoga. And you all could have very well been like, I did not sign up for this. I want to be a yoga teacher. But the reason why I feel called to speak into this was because, yes, I definitely was like sitting before and I was like, okay, there are going to be a handful of people that are not going to be happy. And you were definitely on the list. I was like, okay. But I made sure that I was like, how I held the space for a few of you, like to give you that time to just be alone, not to like make you do things that you didn't want to do, really make it a choice and make that the safe. And I'm wondering for you, if you can recall back to that, like you did feel a little uncomfortable, but there was something there that allowed you to feel safe so that you did it again. Because after that, it was always a choice. That day, it wasn't necessarily a choice to do it. But after that, and so much so that you did the teacher training, the facilitator training last year, and you're facilitating Movement 109 in Germany. So can you kind of speak into that? Like, what was it that, even though you felt a little uncomfortable, there was something there? Was it curiosity? Was it the safety, or both?
Yeah, I think it was the curiosity. I feel like I think that Movement 109, more than anything else in my practice, definitely unlocked this idea of curiosity and staying in the body. I think it's really transformed my practice. Although, if anyone were to take your practice than my practice, they would probably, I don't know, maybe not see any similarities. Like, I think that's a cool thing. And I think that's an empowering thing about nomad teaching and about like your teaching, and hopefully what we teach in Tribe, is that it doesn't have to look just one way, right? And that's exciting and that's amazing. And that's leadership also.
Yeah.
Hopefully that you can let people see that, right? That like, this is me, I am a leader in this organization, and you don't have to look anything like this. To like hold something, to create something, and then let it go. I think it's like a huge sign of leadership. But I think that unlocking that curiosity made me feel stay in my body. Maybe I started out not feeling safe, and then taught me that my body is a safe place, and that I can always make choices and be in control, and that I can like look funny and whatever. I probably look funny most of the time anyways. We brought in like this element of, you mentioned the playfulness and things, but I think if most people see me on the street, like playful doesn't come to mind, They're like, does this lady ever smile or like, oh, I don't want to go up to her right now. I don't know what's happening. So I can be like a little serious in the moment, but I think when people or like in passing, I'm not sure what the phrase is, but then I think when people get to know me, oh my goodness, you're talking about traveling. I just took a new passport photo and my husband and my kids looked at it and they were like, were you trying to like kill the camera? Like, I have your face. I was like, God told me I had to have a blank face. They were like, that is not a blank face. That is like a murderer's face. And so I can like definitely go there pretty quickly.
The word that I thought was unassuming, but now that you just told that story, I feel like you're a slow burn, Amy. Like you come in, you're very like, this is what we're going to do. And, you're meeting them where they're at because that's the population. You're kind of like stoic, right? Like you are a little bit more stoic. And that's sort of the way that I see you, as claiming your space in the male dominated and mindset, like you were speaking into. Like, I'm meeting you where you're at, and just so you know, I'm in charge. But then, the way that you teach, I love so much, because all of a sudden you're like making these jokes, but you say it so dry, and I'm like, is she for real? Like, but it's like I said, it's a slow burn. You're just putting this little playfulness in there, this curiosity in there, but you're still in this sort of stoic space of, this persona that you have. But that's where I can feel your guard is getting down. And that allows people who come in with that same energy too, like a little bit of that ego on their side, is that ego of like, what's this yoga thing? Or what are we going to do? What's this woman teaching me? I don't know, those various conversations that might be in their head. And you really come in with this presence of, this is what we're doing. But then as they get into the practice, I can see you adding a little bit of that slow burn of humor and curiosity, that their guards come down to. So it's really powerful to have that gift.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm crying from laughing.
I'll have to show you that picture. It's pretty intense.
Yeah. Well, we'll make that your
break the screen though.
We'll make that your new nomad guide.
Oh golly, it is real bad. It's pretty bad. And they last for 10 years. Everyone told me 10 years.
It is 10 years. Well, maybe for everybody who's listening to this, we'll just have to put that as your like headshot for the summit.
And you can't wear glasses. It's not good.
Oh my gosh, you're so funny. Okay, we have been to lots of amazing places today, but is there anywhere else that you want to emphasize or make sure if we didn't touch on something?
No, I just tell people to just keep trying in a good sense, like that, and you can be a leader. If I can do it, you can do it. And it just requires someone to step up, right? You see something, you want to change it, and you can do it. Then you might get it wrong. You probably get it wrong a lot. And that's okay.
I like that reclaiming of trying. The word that has been, I feel like I've been hearing a lot the last handful of years because of the pandemic, is pivoting. And I absolutely hated it because as a dancer, there's a lot of pivots. That's what a transition is a pivot. But I used to struggle with it. Like I used to write in my journal about how I hated transitions. Like I was so horrible physically in my dancing. Like I hated certain things. But it was because I wasn't fully centered and how I knew how to change direction. So I had to be centered first. But the way that you really speak about trying, it feels centered. Like it feels like, this is me. And you might not like me, but I'm going to keep trying. And I'm going to it has, like I said, the word spunk before, it has a lot of energy behind it, the way that you speak into trying. So good job.
Well, we very much, I guess I should have had it next. We, in my family, we very much go back to the Theodore Roosevelt Man in the Arena, and like this is the trying. And I am like usually covered with something all over my face or my hands or whatever, usually my shirt. I just wear aprons around the house. I actually took my apron off for this interview.
Oh, thanks.
And like, that's trying, right? That's it. And that's okay. It's good.
That's awesome.
So
Can you let people know about how to continue to be with you and Tribe, and what the free gift that you're gifting for our people?
sure. So Tribe is tribeyogamilitary.org. We have some videos on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, if you're curious as to what some of the practices look like, whether they're movement practices, meditation practices, breathwork practices, or you just want to check out one of our trainings. We tend to have 2 trainings a year. We do have an online moral injury training, 100% self-paced and virtual, that's available all the time. And we host a yoga teacher training each year. So if you are interested in joining those, or if you know someone that wants to work with the military, serve others, or veterans, certainly check us out. So tribeyogamilitary.org.
Awesome. Thank you. Oh, I'm
Thank
so
you.
grateful to have this time with you, Amy. I was thinking about this when I was getting ready today. I was like, oh my gosh, we have known each other for 5 years.
Oh,
So you've been a student and a colleague and business co-owner. I don't know what the co-founder, and it's been just a joy to be able to witness you as you've made this transition and really own this leadership role. So thank you for letting me be a witness and also being a guide part of the time. And yeah,
thank you.
grateful. Yeah.
It's been great working with you.
Yeah. Congratulations. Yes. Keep
Thanks.
going. Thanks, Amy.
Cool. Okay. Bye.